After high school, Mama wanted me to go to college. I begged her to let me enroll in art school in New York City so I could study to be a fashion designer. But by the time she gave in, I decided I had other plans for my future. I wanted to stay in Atlanta near my mama, so I took classes at a beauty school and specialized in doing nails. Not the career I wanted, but no 18-year-old girl knows what she really wants to do with her life. And at least this way, I could make some money and pick my own hours. I didn't want someone bossing me around and telling me what to do and where to be. If you haven't already figured it out, I do not like authority figures. Not at all. Toward the end of high school, while I was wasting time until graduation and spending every Sunday night at Jelly Bean, I got a job at Lamonte's Beauty Supply, which was located in the Delos Shopping Center in East Point. I ran the cash register, which I actually didn't hate, and the shop was owned by a guy who was rumored to be a big-time drug dealer. That meant we got paid in cash every 2 weeks, tax-free. Lamonte's was managed by Rico Wade, who gave me my first makeover and ended up being an important part of my career. It's hard to imagine now, but in my teens, I dressed like a girl. Way more than before my tomboy look kicked into full gear. One day, we were at Rico's house, and he handed me a pair of Jabot jeans. "What is this?" I asked. "Put 'em on," he replied. My very first pair of baggy jeans. I tried them on right then. They were huge and fell around my ankles. "They won't stay up," I said. "I don't understand how you make 'em stay up." "Here," Rico said. He put a belt through the loops and arranged the pants so they were dangling off my butt. "You look fly," he confirmed, nodding. It took a while for me to get used to those pants, but I did. From then on, I dressed like a boy. Rico called me the brother with lipstick, and the nickname stuck. Rico knew a guy named N. Burke who was putting together a music group around Atlanta. Rico knew I could sing because I was always singing in the car and around him every day. And he definitely had seen me dance at Jelly Bean, so he told N about me. At the time, N was managing a girl named Crystal Jones, who wanted to start a girl group. Rico had coincidentally also met Lisa, who recently moved to Atlanta from Philadelphia with almost nothing to her name. I didn't know Lisa at the time, but N asked both of us to come in and audition with Crystal. I didn't feel like going and had to work at the beauty salon where I'd recently become a hair apprentice, so I sent my friend Beverly in my place. I didn't care. I wanted to be in a group, sure, but I wasn't about to spend my time running around town auditioning. So Rico made them come to me. He told N, "You have to see this girl. She's dope. Go to her house." The next day, Rico, N, and Crystal showed up at my mama's house. Lisa, who they accepted into the group the night before, waited in the car outside. I sang 2 songs, That Girl by Stevie Wonder and Wanna Get With You by Guy, and danced in the living room. I was in. The first time I actually met Lisa was at Crystal's house, where we joined up to rehearse. Lisa had come to Atlanta with a keyboard, a few bucks, and a honey bun. She had this baby face with huge, pretty eyes. I liked her immediately. At the time, everyone called her QT, which was a perfect name because she was seriously adorable. Crystal introduced us. "Hey, how you doing?" I said. "Hey, girl," she said. And that was it. We hit it off. In that first moment, we just connected. And we connected on everything, period. After that, we'd sit on the floor of Crystal's house, talk about life, and laugh a lot. Anything she would say, I'd laugh, and anything I'd say, she'd laugh. And Crystal just sat there like a third wheel. I sensed in those few days that Lisa would become someone really important in my life, and she did. She was eventually my close friend and creative partner. We had this strong bond. I knew she was meant to become a special person in my life, somehow. Our group with Crystal was called Second Nature, In 1990, we recorded a demo called I Got It Going On with producer and rapper Jermaine Dupri, who was then best known for working with Criss Cross and Silk Times Leather, and for being a dancer for the rap group Houdini. The idea was that we would use the demo to get signed, but it was never actually released. In the studio, Jermaine told me I should sing in a deep register all the time and make that my thing. I used to sing background vocals for Criss Cross's demos when Jermaine was trying to get them a record deal, and I felt like he had a good sense of my skill. I took his advice to heart, so every day second nature practiced and sang and danced in Crystal's house, hoping it would lead us to fame. During all this, I was still working at the salon and learning how to do hair from a guy named Maurice Beeman and a woman named Marie Davis. I'd known Marie since I was 14 years old. I met her in a Kroger grocery store. She approached me and asked me to model for her salon. "Let me ask my mom," I said. Marie told my mama that I had a beautiful face. "There's something special about her," Marie said. So my mama let me start modeling for the salon in my teens. I won all the competitions they entered me in, and it was only natural that Marie would eventually have me start learning to do hair myself. She always said, "T, you're gonna be a star." "Girl, that's right," I replied. "You can see it, 'cause I be telling everybody, and they don't believe me." "Yes," she said, smiling. "You're a star." Marie told me about a woman named Pebbles who had just moved to Atlanta with her husband, L.A. Reid, a well-known record producer and co-founder of LaFace Records with Kenny Babyface Edmonds. One day, standing in the beauty salon, Marie offered up some new information. "You know," she said, "Pebbles is looking for a group." "Well, go tell her I'm the bomb," I said recklessly. "Tell her she needs to holler at me." That night, my phone rang. "Hello?" I answered. "Is this Tionne?" It was Pebbles. I couldn't believe it. I was just talking junk, never thinking she'd actually call. "Yes," I said. I stood in my room, holding the phone to my ear, shocked. "Marie told me I should call you," Pebbles said. "I want to meet you." She didn't waste any time. The next night, Pebbles took me, Lisa, and Crystal to dinner at an Italian restaurant, nothing super ritzy, and got to know us. I thought Pebbles was so pretty. Everything she had was nice. Thick, pretty hair, beautiful clothes, a fancy car. She even had a Chanel bag. She seemed nice, too. She was the sort of person who made you admire all the things she had, at least at first. When my friends found out I was going to audition for Pebbles, they had a lot to say. Pebbles had a hot song called Mercedes Boy, which I loved at the time. "You have to go there and wear high heels and look like her," one said. "She's all dolled up and she's high class," another told me. "She's sedity." This was the term everybody used in Atlanta around the time to describe someone like Pebbles. If someone was super glamorous and wealthy, you'd call them sedity. But I wasn't about to change who I was just to impress someone. "No," I told them. "She's going to respect me for being myself. I'm going to rock my stuff and show her who I am." On the third night after Pebbles called me at home, we auditioned for her. I wore baggy jeans and a giant t-shirt. No high heels. Lisa and I went in. Crystal, though, barely moved or sang. She just kind of stood there. But Pebbles told us she wanted us to be her new girl group anyway, despite Crystal's lazy effort. She even had a name for us, TLC. Each letter stood for the first initial of each of our names, which we thought was clever and fun. The strangest part about the story of TLC for me is that I felt like I knew it was going to happen. I dreamed my entire life of performing on a stage in front of thousands of screaming fans, and I felt like that was inevitable for me. 2 weeks before Pebbles called me, I felt it stronger than I ever had. I came home one day and told my mama, I feel it. It's about to happen. What's about to happen? She asked. I'm about to blow up, I replied. I was so sure. I'm about to be on TV soon. I can tell. My mama just smiled and said, okay. That was always her response when I said something like that. She said, as long as I kept my morals, integrity, and character intact, she'd support anything I did. She'd tell me, always be the best at whatever you do. But I knew what was coming, whether she believed my premonition or not. Soon after I told her it was about to happen, Pebbles hollered at me and TLC came into the world. It felt like fate was guiding me. As soon as Pebbles took control, it became clear that she wasn't a fan of Crystal. And to be fair, Crystal wasn't a good fit. She just stood there while we rehearsed, barely moving, not dancing at all. She once told Lisa and me, I don't like to sing in front of people. But we were so young. I was 19 at the time, and we didn't exactly know how to control our own circumstances. But you have to have standards for quality. Otherwise, what are you even doing? One day, before she officially signed us, Pebbles sat Lisa and me down in her office. Crystal's lacking, she said. One can mess it up for the whole group. We didn't know what to say, but we knew what she meant. She never said the words directly or told us we had to fire Crystal, but she hinted strongly. We wanted Pebbles to be the one to send Crystal packing since it was her ideal, not ours, but apparently it was our responsibility. Pebbles pulled us aside again, soon after the first conversation, and was more stern about it this time. If you don't get rid of Crystal, all of you are out, she said. No hints this time. We had to step up. Lisa and I showed up at Crystal's house shortly after that. On the porch, just before we knocked on the door, I grabbed Lisa's arm. Do you fight? I asked, because we're about to throw her out of her own group. And if she gets rowdy, we're going to have to fight. Lisa nodded. After Crystal let us in, we sat across from her at the booth in her kitchen. Lisa delivered the blow. Girl, Lisa said to Crystal, we got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that Pebbles wants to sign us. But the bad news is, girl, that we don't want you in the group no more. I bust out laughing. I couldn't believe she said it like that. Crystal didn't try to fight us, though. She took the news really well and asked us to leave, wishing us luck on our way out. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, but Pebbles' words lingered in my mind. One can mess it up for the whole group. As we walked out of the house and onto the front porch, we both felt a wave of relief. I felt bad for her, but we had to do what was right for us. It was our first important lesson. You have to put yourself first, be your own priority, and leave behind those who can't quite cut it. It's not selfish if it's the right thing to do for your career and you're not dogging someone out in the process. You have only one shot, and you have to take it. You have to try not to burn any bridges along the way. Pebbles brought Ian out of his management position in February of 1991, officially signed us to Pebbletone Management, and it all began. We held auditions to find a new member. We needed someone who was a certain height, a certain look, and was able to sing and dance. It seemed impossible. The LA and Babyface's record label, LaFace Records, had a new group called Damien Dame. This girl named Rosanda was dancing for them, and LA suggested her to Pebbles. In April of 1991, Pebbles bought her in, and the night we met her, we all rehearsed a song and dance routine in Pebbles' office. We christened her Chili, our new C. The three of us went to the massive gated house in Atlanta's Country Club of the South, where Pebbles and LA lived, to audition for LA and Dallas Austin, whom I knew from Jelly Bean and one of their producers, KO. The house was enormous. Usher actually ended up buying it years later. Driving through the neighborhood, I didn't find it hard to imagine myself in one of these giant mansions. I kept thinking, I can't wait to live like this one day. We walked into the house through the double doors. Inside, everything was done up in natural tones. A balcony hovered high above us, leading onto the second floor. There was a real pretty dining room, and this ornate fabric gathered together above the table at the chandelier. I thought, wow, this is how ballers do. I can't wait to get one of these one day. It wasn't that I wanted Pebbles in LA's house of their actual stuff. I wanted my own version of it. I wanted to be the sort of person who would have a fancy dining room with a chandelier. It gave me the push to really work hard. I figured if I could prove myself and become a famous musician, then I could be a baller too. Each of us had prepared a song for the audition. Chili sang Hold On by En Vogue. Lisa offered up an original rap, and I reprised Wanna Get With You by Guy. It was the perfect song for me. It showed off that low tone in my voice. Altogether, the three of us brought varied skills to the table. You could hear our different voices and tones in the audition, and you can tell how they might all work together. It felt like a success. It was intimidating, sure, but I had to seem confident. When we finished, LA simply said, I like them. So Chili was in, and we officially signed as TLC with LaFace that summer. One of the first things Pebbles did was send me into a rehearsal space to figure out who I was going to be on stage. I selected the name T-BOZ as my stage name. It started just as Boz, but I liked the idea that T-BOZ was short for Tionne is Boss. It felt like it fit me. Pebbles put me in that rehearsal hall for 8 hours every day for 5 days straight, leaving me alone with myself and giving me food, water, and Gatorade. Go in there and figure out who T-BOZ is, she said. So I stood in that room in front of those mirrors, and I figured it out. I had to find out how I was going to move, how I was going to look, and what my dances would be. Doing that made me raw, and throughout the years, I just perfected it. I've always had my own signature moves. I grab my crotch when I dance, I roll my neck. People would talk about the T-BOZ neck roll. Being in the rehearsal space on my own really made me identify who I was as an artist. I don't recall the other girls being sent in to do the same. Maybe Pebbles was putting more pressure on me because I was leading the songs. But either way, after that, I was ready to go. Almost immediately after we signed with LaFace, TLC went into the studio to make our first album with these mega huge producers, Jermaine Dupri, Dallas Austin, Daryl Simmons, Kenny Babyface Edmonds. We recorded a lot of the tracks with Dallas at Doppler Studios in Atlanta. We were so hyped to be making our first album. But despite all the excitement and the seemingly fairy tale direction my life was headed in, I was constantly sick from my disease. I got sick every 3 months, at least. If I overdid it at Jelly Bean, or if I was too cold outside that night, I'd be in pain that night or the next morning. If I rehearsed too hard, my limbs would ache. I always pushed through it, ignoring the pain and forcing myself to be the performer I wanted to be despite my illness, or at least until my body just collapsed and couldn't take it anymore. I refused to believe that anything could stop me from becoming T-BOZ. But soon after we went into the studio, I had a major flare-up of my disease. I was in pain all over my body and couldn't leave my bed. Lisa and Chili called me from the studio after they laid down the tracks for our first single, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, which Lisa wrote with Dallas. T, Lisa said over the phone, listen to this shit. It's so dope. They played the song for me through the phone lines. I was so excited about it. It was a great song, but it was hard being trapped in bed by this disease. I was so sick. I couldn't be there in the studio, and there was nothing I could do but wait to get better. The pain eventually went away after I was released from the hospital yet again. I took care of myself like my mama and I always did. I got to go back to the studio, and the excitement returned. I wasn't a patient anymore. I was T-BOZ, and I was making my first album. We were so excited, and we used to get really wild between sessions, unable to control our energy. That turned into the most intense food fights you'd ever seen, and I meant that literally. We threw food everywhere, at each other and at Dallas. One night, while in the studio, we got so out of control that the food fight took over the entire building. We wanted revenge on Dallas for the last fight, which we lost badly. Lisa had a plan. Mix flour and water together in a bowl and dump it on his head when he wasn't expecting it. But Lisa mixed it up too thick, and instead of running all over his head, the dough just stuck in the bowl on top of his head. He wasn't going to let us get away with that. Every time we grabbed some food and tried to hurl it at him, he grabbed our hands and mashed the food in our faces with our own hands. We chased Dallas through the studio from the recording control room into the halls, hurling water and food everywhere. Water pooled all over the floor. Ketchup smashed, sandwiches, and all kinds of food smeared the walls. To make matters worse, we poured water down the hallway so we could slide down it, like a really ghetto water slide. The people who ran Doppler Studios freaked out. They called Pebbles and LaFace. You're going to have to pay for this damage, they told us. Clean it up. Eventually, we calmed down, cleaned up the studio, and washed the walls. Dallas even had to clean the carpets with a rented shampoo machine. It took hours before we could go home. We were so bad. Looking back, I'm so embarrassed. My mama definitely taught me better than that. But it was all in good fun. We were too young to really realize that time in a studio cost a lot of money, and we were wasting it on food fights. I didn't yet understand the value of time in the music industry. Work and play should be kept separate, even if you have fun getting the job done. We had a real goal with the music. We didn't necessarily aim for a specific genre. What made us unique was the combination of sounds, joining our three very different musical sensibilities. I was funk, Lisa was hip-hop, and Chili was R&B, and it all surprisingly happened to cross over into pop. Together we made something that felt both familiar and new. Our chemistry together was amazing, the sort of thing that couldn't be bought or manufactured. Our songs were immediate, pounding with hooks, and broke new ground. We were always passionate and having strong lyrical content, even from the start. The thing that made us so special was that we talked about relatable issues in our music, and we did it in a fun way. We wanted to introduce the lyrics in a really danceable way. Every hook had a dance. You'd always remember it, and the message too. Our first album, Ooh on the TLC Tip, dropped on February 25th, 1992 on LaFace Arista Records. The title of the album came from the last line of the single, Ain't Too Proud to Beg. I'll never forget the day it came out. We were in the parking lot at Taco Bell, and Ain't Too Proud to Beg came on the car radio. We were in Chili's Volkswagen, which had a hole in the floor on the passenger side. Stuff was always falling out the hole while she was driving. We were pulled over at the Taco Bell, and our own voices blared out of the car speakers. All three of us leapt out of the car and started high-fiving and dancing in the parking lot. We didn't care who was looking. "Oh, shit," Lisa said. "We about to blow up. We on the radio," I screamed. We were all over the parking lot, shrieking and jumping up and down. I couldn't believe that my voice was actually coming out of the car speakers. This was it. This was our moment. It was the beginning, and I could feel it. After it dropped, our album started climbing the charts. Ain't Too Proud to Beg, which first came out in November the year before, made it to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, and Baby, 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 the album's second single, hit number 2. The album itself made it to number 3 on the Billboard R&B Albums chart, which was insane to us. Fame was coming. We'd never even played a real show. But I remember the first real time TLC went on stage like it was yesterday. It was June 6th, 1992. We were invited to open for MC Hammer on his tour, which was a big deal. Most artists start off with some club shows in smaller rooms, and we did do some college auditorium dates, but we catapulted right into arenas. Our first show on the tour was in Dallas at the Reunion Arena. Boyz II Men and Jodeci were also opening for Hammer. The tour had been going on since April, and when we arrived to join, it felt like we were really hitting the big time. By the time we got to Las Vegas a few weeks later, the whole world was buzzing about us. That night, June 26th, was the first time we could feel the world responding to us. Apparently, everyone wanted to see these new TLC girls. Before the show started, I stood backstage, pacing around with Lisa and Chili. It was unlike anything we'd ever seen. Dressing rooms, catering, free snacks, people everywhere. Atlanta seemed really far away. We were like racehorses, reeling toward the gates, ready to run. Anxiety coursed through me, confused, in moments with excitement. I felt urgently like I had to pee, but couldn't go. I hovered over the dressing room toilet uselessly. It's something that still happens to me every time I play a TV show. The nerves shoot through your body and give you all these mixed signals. I didn't think about how young I was or how inexperienced. I was just thinking, this is it. When I came back out, Jessica, our assistant, leaned over and reminded me to breathe. I tried to slow the air as it surged through my lungs, but it was impossible. This was our big moment. My heart pounded through my whole body. Thump, thump, thump. We edged over to the side of the stage, getting ready to run out, and I could hear the crowd chanting, TLC, 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 echoed through the venue, cried out by almost 20,000 people. I grabbed Lisa's arm and gasped. They're saying our name. I know, she said excitedly. Her eyes were huge. I could tell she felt the same fear and excitement that I did. We'd never heard anyone shouting our own name back to us. It was crazy. The chants got louder, rising through the room. All these people wanted to see us, 3 teenage girls from Atlanta. They knew our name. They loved us already. I was already out of breath before we even got on stage. And then we stepped out onto the expanse of the Las Vegas Arena's stage, microphones in hand, and we began to sing. Later, I realized that show mirrored a dream I had had repeatedly as a kid. When I was 7 years old, growing up in Des Moines, I started having the most vivid dream. There was a stage, and I was on the left side, wearing baggy pants and a baggy shirt. Below me, people screamed. I could hear nothing but their voices. In the dream, I had no face, like I was only seeing myself from the neck down, and I would run from the left side of the stage over to the right and gestured outward into a sea of people. It was always exactly the same. I had it constantly for years and years. It didn't mean anything at the time. It was just a dream I kept having. I didn't know it was offering me a real glimpse of my future. Baggy clothes, left side of the stage, everything. I used to wake up and tell my mama, people are going to know my name. They're going to know my face. I'm going to be on billboards and magazines across the world. She would just say, okay, sweetie. She heard me say it so many times, but I knew it was true. I remember one time during high school, a teacher asked us, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? I blurted out, on TV. Everyone laughed. I cried when I got home. Tionne, my mom said, other people don't always believe in your dreams the same way you do. Sometimes you have to keep them to yourself and believe on your own. And I always did. On stage in Vegas, only a few weeks into our first ever tour, with the crowd surging and chanting in front of us, everything was perfectly clear. You always hear people say, my dream came true. It's a cliche, I know, but that's how it was for me. That night, I knew my dream had come true. TLC was going to make me a star. Chapter 4. Running Through the Halls. It's an amazing feeling to leave home and venture out into the world with your band. I was happy to be there, but I didn't necessarily realize until I was older what an opportunity it is to get to see the world and all the awesome things it has to offer. When I was young, it was just about being in the moment. That was my attitude during the Hammer Tour, which we had joined in Dallas in early June. Boyz II Men and Jodeci were the other bands on the tour, and Dalvin DeGrate, known as Mr. Dalvin, was one of Jodeci's 4 members. I didn't notice him at first, not until he decided he wanted to talk to me. All of the dancers on the tour loved him, and so did the groupies. Everyone used to whisper that the dancers were sleeping with the members of Jodeci, so I was wary of Dalvin. It wasn't until the end of the tour that we became friends, and then I started noticing how cute and fashionable he was. He had a good sense of humor, which is important to me. But as the tour kicked off, he was barely in my periphery. Plus, most of the guys who talked to us didn't care which member they got as long as it was one of us. That wasn't super comforting, so instead I focused my energy on TLC. It was exciting to be so far away from home and from our former lives. No more hair salons, and none of us had traveled like this before. We quickly got used to the pace of touring, every day in a new town and everything constantly moving. Lisa, Chili, and I went wild. We had been let loose into the world and we refused to be controlled. That meant, of course, that Pebbles didn't trust us when she wasn't there. She wanted to wrangle us at all times. She sent a woman named Jocelyn out on tour with us as our handler, which basically meant she was there to babysit us. If we swore or misbehaved, Jocelyn would tell on us to Pebbles. Our pay for the week, already questionably low, would then get docked. You're kidding yourself if you think that stopped us from acting up, though. We still did whatever we wanted. We were 3 young adults on the road and wanted to take advantage of every opportunity to explore. But we were always being reminded that Pebbles was controlling our career. Pebbles had this way of always making us feel like we weren't doing good enough. Maybe in her mind, she was trying to make us better by always urging us to strive for something bigger. During the Hammer Tour, we hit 3 million copies sold on our album. Our reaction? That's the bomb! Pebbles said, well, other people hit 4 million. Then we hit 4 million ourselves. When we were happy with our success, Pebbles would always say something like, well, she'd claim other people sold 10 million. She said, people like Whitney Houston have sold more than that with the Bodyguard soundtrack. I don't really know what her strategy was, Maybe she wanted us to have something to chase. She always made us feel like a kid who wants her parents' approval, but is never good enough. But honestly, it would push me to want to do better. And she would always tell me how fly she thought I was, which was comforting. When the Hammer Tour stopped in LA, we stayed at La Montrose Suite Hotel near the Sunset Strip. We got tired of Jocelyn always trying to regulate us, so we hauled an ice bucket full of cold water up to her room. We banged our fists against the door, and when she opened it, her hair freshly permed, we hurled the water all over her head. It totally ruined her hair. We ran away laughing. We filled the ice bucket again and pounded on the door of a hotel guest who'd been playing guitar loudly in his room. You could hear it through the walls, and it was so bad. "Room service," we shouted. When he opened his door, we doused him with the ice water, yelling, "Stop playing your fucking guitar!" We took off down the halls, convinced no one would ever catch us. Little did Chili and I know, Lisa snuck back and drew a left eye symbol with an arrow over the top of it, using the sand from an ashtray in the hallway outside his room, marking her territory. Who does that? It was so funny, like a robber leaving a bank with the money trail scattered behind him, leading right to his front door. She was basically saying, "Hello, it was me." The next morning, security kicked us out of the hotel. This isn't appropriate behavior, they told us. We weren't that sorry, but we were allowed to come back only if we feigned an apology and promised to act better. Hotel hallways were the place where we got into it, and we were in hotels an awful lot. Chili and Lisa used to pull their butts out and run through the hallways to see if anyone would catch them, butt cheeks out flapping. Somehow, they never got caught, but I didn't ever want to do it. "You make me sick," Lisa said one night. "You don't want to ever have fun with us. Pull your pants down." "You don't ever do it," Chili agreed, jumping in. "Shut up," I retorted. But I had enough of them nagging me. "Okay," I agreed. "I'll do it." I yanked my pants down and started tearing down the hall, shrieking. I was running lopsided, trying to maneuver with my pant legs around my knees. I was freaked out someone in the hotel was going to see me. A door opened. I turned around. It was our road manager, Woody, standing there, looking at my butt cheeks. I screamed and pulled my pants up. Lisa and Chili were laughing so hard they could barely stand. "See," I said to Lisa and Chili, "this is why I don't do this." But Lisa didn't stop. Another night, she was skidding through the halls, pants down, and there was a turn in the corridor. Too late. Lisa didn't veer in time, and she smashed directly into a giant mirror. It came tumbling off the wall and shattered all over her like something out of a cartoon. "Lisa," I said, "you're so clumsy." She was lying on the floor, glass everywhere, butt cheeks still drooping out of her pants. She ended up having to go to the hospital to get the mirror shards yanked out of her hand and a cut on her pinky fixed. I sat with her in the room while a nurse came in to give her a shot and pull out the glass. When the nurse stuck the needle in Lisa's hand, blood shot everywhere and splattered all over the lady's face. Lisa and I laughed so hard. The nurse glared at us. If looks could kill, hers would have. "Bitch, I ain't got AIDS," Lisa assured her. "You ain't gotta worry." I was having a blast with Lisa and Chili, and Dalvin was at the back of my mind. I knew he was cute, and the girls liked him. It took weeks of touring before Dalvin and I started talking. He finally worked up the courage to approach me on the last week of tour, and we clicked right away. So by the end of the Hammer Tour, he and I were dating. A lot has been written about me and Dalvin and our relationship. We used to have fun, but we argued a lot too. We were really young. I was only 20. And we were both caught up in the throes of fame. He was popular, and he had girls coming at him every night. They just throw themselves at him. It's hard having a relationship when you're a celebrity in the public eye. And when you date a celebrity, that's one thing I'll say for sure. It feels like everybody's out to get you. But we liked each other, and he was important to me during this time, no matter the drama. TLC had a lot of fun on that first tour, and it was exciting to be out on the road and to have this new boyfriend. But it was also incredibly difficult for me. I was sick off and on, and no one really knew how to help me. TLC was scheduled to perform at an awards show. I can't even remember which one because they're all blurred together. At one point during the tour, and I was super sick. One of Pebble's staff members told me that Pebbles didn't want to let me off the hook. I don't care if she has to go out there and perform in a wheelchair. She's going on stage, Pebbles apparently said. I never found out if that was true, but it definitely didn't make me feel like she had my back. I wasn't thinking a lot about my illness, though, mostly because I still didn't know how to manage it. I also didn't want to face the reality that I had the disease to begin with. My dreams were coming true, so sickness was the last thing on my mind. My mama had always told me that I could do whatever I set my mind to, and that's what I was trying to do. I never thought, I'm sick. Can I still do this? I just assumed I could. I wasn't necessarily keeping my illness a secret, but my mentality was that my business was my business. I also didn't want anyone to pity me for something they'd never been through and that they didn't understand. Unfortunately, my body had other plans. Before one of our shows, I miscalculated my pain medicine and took too many pills. They had to do my makeup as I lay on the floor. I got dressed on the floor. I was carried to the edge of the stage for our performance, and our security stood around the stage to catch me in case I fell. After the show, I passed out and just lay there. People actually had to step over me. I felt done. I was so nauseated and messed up. My cousin Tay, who danced for TLC, called my mom on the payphone from the venue. You need to get here, she said. She's not doing good. I ended up in the hospital after that show. My mom was there the next day. Lisa and Chili didn't know much about my illness. I felt ill and became weak and struggled to breathe and felt pain in my joints, but they didn't really get the severity of it. I didn't explain it either. Dalvin didn't understand either. Everything came to a head after our show in Denver. I didn't know at the time that high elevation causes my disease to flare up. The lack of oxygen in the air thins my blood, and I get really sick. As our tour bus pulled away from our show in Denver, I lay in my bunk, and it felt like invisible knives were stabbing into me. I curled into a ball, clutching myself, hoping it would pass. I was in tears from the pain. When we arrived in Omaha, after a long, bumpy drive, they put me directly onto a stretcher and rolled me into the hospital. My mama showed up immediately. She flew in and stayed by my side. It became clear to everyone that I was actually sick. This wasn't the flu or fatigue. I had a serious illness, and it was threatening my career. The doctor said I wasn't strong enough to continue the tour. TLC had to drop off and miss 2 weeks' worth of shows. I felt like there was a lot of weight on my shoulders because we were responsible for paying the crew and keeping all these people employed, and we were making no money during the downtime. Some people were furious that I was going to make us lose money. I'm sure they wanted me to keep going, but I couldn't. Lisa was concerned and supported me, so that was comforting, and at least someone had my back. That particular hospital experience in Omaha was really strange. A student got through security by posing as a doctor. He tried to check my pulse on my groin and kept trying to get a peek at my private parts. The police department had to scare away all the freaks by taking shifts outside my room. After I was discharged, my mom came back to get something from the hospital room and found a male nurse lying on my bed, sniffing the sheets. "This is where she was laying," he said. It was really spooky. My health wasn't my only concern at the time. We started losing trust in Pebbles as the Hammer tour went on. We were worried about our contracts. One day, backstage, Lisa called me into the hallway. She had been talking to some people who worked with Hammer and wanted me to join in on the conversation. They said, "We got to pay more attention to how we getting paid." I nodded. Hammer's people would know how the business worked. If they said we should look into our contracts, then we should. Even Hammer himself gave us that advice. We started asking questions, but Pebbles didn't want to give us any answers. Whenever we asked her when we'd see some money, she'd reply, "The label has to recoup all the expenses first." We started noticing differences between our career and those of other artists. If Pebbles wasn't the one to orchestrate a deal for TLC, then it wouldn't happen. It felt like she shut us down every time an opportunity arose outside of her. Pebbles had been controlling from the start. Before Chili joined up, Lisa and I took a trip out to Cali. Crystal had been kicked out by then, and Pebbles flew us out to dance in her video for her song Backyard. Pebbles heard that New Edition, MC Breed, Hammer, and some other bands were staying at our hotel. So she moved us to another one where they were having a retirement home staycation. Not as fun. There was a woman who worked for Pebbles named Tionne, who was supposed to look after us while we were out there. Lisa and I had no money, and we had to call home collect from the payphones near the hotel. One day, we called and asked Pebbles for $5 a piece to buy some food from the Ralph's grocery store across the street. Instead of giving us the money, she had Taryn take us to the store that was only across the street and buy us each exactly $5 of food. Taryn was one of the cheapest people I'd ever met. She had a special wallet with categories for all the coupons. It was so weird to have someone control a few bucks to buy food. She could at least handed us the money. How much could we really balled out with $5 per person? At one point, I thought Pebbles and I were cool. We had grown close. But she was way too commanding. She always wanted to have rap sessions with us where she'd make us tell her our innermost secrets and problems. I already had a mother, and a great one at that, so I didn't need another. I didn't need her to be my psychiatrist or my Captain Save-A-Ho. I never got her motives either. Right after our first album came out, Pebbles told me I needed to go solo. One day I was in her kitchen, and Aaliyah's video for Back and Forth came on the TV. "CT," she said, "that should be you." I didn't know what to say. I thought, does she really mean this, or is she just looking for another payday? Because TLC just came out with their first album, and she thinks I should be solo? She was notoriously jealous, especially where LA was concerned. After we finished shooting our video for Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Babyface and LA dropped by to congratulate us. As usual, we were broke and hungry. LA pulled out 3 $20 bills and handed one to each of us. Pebbles stepped over, snatched the money out of our hands, and said, "My man doesn't give any other woman any money." We were dumbfounded. There was no weird intent behind it. He was just trying to reward us for our hard work. When Lisa Chile and I confronted Pebbles about our contracts, she acted all hurt that we didn't trust her. But it was our legal right as the artist to see what we'd signed. We wanted to understand what the contract said and how that affected us. She put a wounded look on her face. I have loved you and nurtured you like you were my own kids. And I was thinking, what does that have to do with seeing our contracts? Pebbles tried to keep the peace with us, especially after our album went platinum. She brought us each a car as a gift. It didn't really occur to us to ask where the money came from. But still, we kept realizing that other artists were seeing more of their profits than we were. Something definitely was amiss. The three of us went to see our lawyer and asked to see the contracts. We asked why we weren't making any money. He explained that Pebbles, Pepitone, LaFace, and Arista were all getting a cut. And then we had management, legal, and accounting fees split 3 ways, as well as taxes. It felt horrible. We had a platinum album. We were selling out shows, fans were mobbing us, and we had nothing to show for it. We suddenly realized that we'd paid for our own cars we thought were gifts. Enough was enough. We were young, but we had to do better than this. The word fair has a different definition in our industry, especially if you've signed along the dotted line of a contract. No one cares what's morally right. Morality goes right out the window. It's just about what you've signed and nothing else. We met with LA and told him we didn't want to work with Pebbles anymore. He knew there'd been some drama going on between us for a while. He looked at us for a minute. Well, he said, you know she owns your name. Okay, we replied. We'll buy it from her. We weren't going to give up our name. We won out, Lisa said, underscoring how important this was to us. He just nodded. We were going to do what we were going to do. We ended up having to pay Pebbles $3 million for our name, $1 million for each letter. Even when we did make some money, it always seemed to go right back to someone involved in the business. And this was another example of that. But it was worth it because it bought us some freedom. We couldn't completely rid ourselves of her since we were signed to Pepitone through the record label, but Pebbles was no longer our manager after that. It was the right thing for TLC to leave her, but everything Pebbles did wasn't awful. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have gotten my shot at stardom. I'll always be the first to admit that. She helped me identify who I was as an artist and as T-BOZ. Even though I've lost a lot of respect for her over the years, I'd never erase her from my past. She's part of TLC's history. She made a difference in my life and in our band, no matter our personal disagreements. After we fired Pebbles, Hiram Hicks became our new manager. We started to pay more attention. You have to notice things about everyone who joins your organization. If something is amiss, you need to move on again. We did that several times over the course of our career, but at that time, Hiram helped to push TLC forward. With a new sense of freedom, TLC joined Bobby Brown on his tour, which kicked off in Charleston, West Virginia in December of 1992. It was us, Shabba Ranks, and Mary J. Blige opening up for him. By that point, we had more experience. We knew how touring worked, and our shows had gotten tighter. I was still worried about getting sick, but I was just hoping my body wouldn't fail me. I had to do this, and I wanted it, so any discomfort was worth it. Sometimes I think about what I put myself through to do this. Another time, when we were on the Hammer tour, I didn't want to ruin the tour again by having to stop. So I rode on the plane on a flight to Alaska for 22 hours during a sickle cell crisis. It was so painful that I remember hiding under my cover, pretending to be asleep and crying. I didn't make that show, but at least we stayed on the tour. Bobby had 4 dancers in his act. One of them, who we can call Alexis, not a real name, had dated Dalvin, who was still my boyfriend, before me. She was a hoe. She didn't like me and always started issues with me, which made me not like her either. She and the other dancers in that crew had it out for TLC, but it was Alexis who especially didn't like us. And since she and some of the other girls were screwing the talent, they felt like they could do whatever they wanted, even antagonize us. Let's be clear, that's not typical hired dancer protocol. Usually, if you mess with the artist, you get fired. We didn't take any mess, not from dancers, not from hoes, not from the label, not from anyone. We weren't necessarily cocky, but we were very confident. By the time we were on Bobby's tour, we were like, yep, we're here. We're the jam. We had this slogan we used to shout on stage, look who's running things. We even had jackets that said it. We had our winch mob, which were our dancers, and our slogan, and we thought we were doing it big. There was a break in the tour dates for the American Music Awards, which took place on January 25th, 1993. It was our first time at a serious awards show, and we were beyond excited. Getting dressed was a serious deal. We had to look fly and to make an impression. The other artists on the tour, Bobby and Mary J. Blige, were also nominated. We were up for Favorite Rap Hip-Hop Artist and Favorite Rap Hip-Hop New Artist. We lost Favorite Rap Hip-Hop New Artist to Criss Cross, which didn't bother us much. But in the other category, we lost to Sir Mix-a-Lot, who had just come out with the song, Put 'Em on the Glass. We did not handle that loss well. When they announced Sir Mix-a-Lot as the winner, we looked at each other like, what the fuck? I mean, we lost at the AMAs to Put 'Em on the Glass, not even to Baby Got Back. We were pissed. We desperately needed to blow off some steam. When we got to the after party, Lisa handed me a White Russian and one of those Dr. Pepper shots that's lit on fire. Here, she said, we need this. I don't drink, and alcohol doesn't mix well with my sickle cell disease. I also don't like the taste of alcohol. I had no idea what I was drinking or how much to drink or what it was going to do to me. But I was on edge from the awards show, and I wanted to see what would happen. I drank both. I got tore up fast. Finally, Lisa hauled me away from the bar and out of the party. Everything looked blurry. I felt strange, and my head was spinning. Lisa led me out the door of the party. As we exited, one of Bobby's dancers slammed into Lisa's shoulder. What the fuck? Lisa said, turning around to face her. The dancer balled up her fist and popped Lisa in her left eye. Alcohol is bad on so many levels. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. I didn't know what to do, and my reflexes were super slow. The dancer sauntered away. Lisa, I slurred. She hit you in the eye. Lisa clutched her face, furious. There was a line of red under her eye, like a blood vessel had burst. Our dancers ran up ready to fight, but Bobby's crew of dancers had already run off. When we got back to our hotel, I was sobbing hysterically. I was too drunk to really function, and I was so frustrated by the fact that I wanted to help Lisa. That heifer had hit her, and if you hit Lisa, it's like you've hit me. Our crew started mobilizing to go fight Bobby's crew, but I was too drunk to help. It was the only time in my life that I haven't been able to fight when I wanted to. Chili, Marie, our hairstylist, Jessica, our assistant, and our dancers were ready to go. I tried to follow everyone out of the hotel. They sat me in a chair in the lobby, refusing to let me come. I'm sorry, Lisa, I muttered, tears streaming down my face. I felt so helpless. Marlon Wayans came over to me where I was sitting in the lobby. He asked, "Are you drunk?" "Yes, I was drunk," I nodded. What a way to meet someone for the first time. And me with my ugly cry going on. Pebble showed up and stopped the fight before it happened, even though she wasn't our manager anymore. That incident was how Lisa started drawing the line under her left eye. It started as a Band-Aid to cover up a burst blood vessel, and later she turned it into a black mark. There's an origin story for everything, even if it's crazy. Everything calmed down momentarily as we headed back on the road. The tour kicked off again in Albany, and there was over a month left of shows. But a few days later, Lisa showed up in our dressing room. She had a box in her hands, and she looked like she was on a mission. "What's that?" I asked. Lisa slapped the box down on the table and opened it. She looked pleased with herself. Inside the box, there was a brand new .22 gun. "I'm gonna shoot that bitch," she said. She meant the dancer who popped her in the eye. "What?" I said, shocked. I fight, and I'll always throw down when warranted, but this seemed kind of extreme. "Yep," Lisa confirmed. "I'm gonna shoot her." Our management had to intervene. They took the gun away from Lisa, which she protested loudly. "I'm not going to kill her," Lisa said. "I was just going to shoot her in the knee or the toe or something." "No," everyone said unanimously. "You can't shoot her at all." But we were only halfway through the tour, and something had to be done to keep the dancers away from us. So management divided the arenas in half every night from then on. We had to stay on one side of the line, and the dancers had to stay on the other. It got really messy. Security would escort Bobby's dancers to and from the stage before and after his performances. Our own dancers had started getting involved too. They carried around these miniature bats. Once Tay-Tay took her bat and smacked one of Bobby's dancers in the kneecap. Tay-Tay wanted to give her a warning like, "We'll fuck you up if you mess with TLC." And Tay fights like two men combined, so you don't want to mess with her. Another day, Chili ran breathlessly into our dressing room and announced, "Two of them just surrounded me. One was in front of me and one was in the back." She grinned and added, "But I stood my ground. I ain't scared. I'll fight those bitches." And she would have too. We tried to tell Bobby that his girls were out of line, but he and his brother Tommy loved them. The three of us met with Bobby and Tommy and asked for his help. "Those hoes are getting out of line," Lisa said. "They're taking it too far," I added. Bobby said he would talk to them, but we got the sense that nothing was going to change since they were sleeping with those girls. We had to stick to our side of the arena, and those heifers had to stick to theirs. That was one of the best tours I've ever been on, but it was also one of the most chaotic, dramatic, and messy. It was second only to the Hammer Tour, which is still my favorite tour I've ever been on. And despite the drama, I loved every minute of the Bobby Brown Tour. Marie, the same Marie who started this all back in Atlanta, was along for the ride to do our hair. And some of my funniest stories involve her. We started pranking each other on the road, always trying to one-up what the other person pulled. It started innocently with a food fight. I honestly don't know why we were always flinging food around. One night, Belinda, our road manager, came into the dressing room with this piece of chocolate cake. "Nobody eat my chocolate cake," she told us. "I'm not playing. Catering has no more cake. Don't let anybody touch my cake. Don't." She wrote her name on the plate and left it on a table. When I walked into the dressing room after coming off stage, Marie hurled something at me. It was a piece of food. I threw some back at her. We ended up throwing everything in there. There was food all over the dressing room, and I had food covering my face. Eventually, we ran out of stuff to throw. That's when I saw Belinda's cake. You better not, Marie warned. But I took that cake and chucked it at Marie's face. Chocolate smeared all over her. Belinda walked in the room and I immediately shouted, "Marie stole your cake." "Marie!" Belinda said. She looked pissed. I kept a straight face, but Marie started laughing. "I didn't," Marie protested. "Yes, you did, Marie," I accused. I was trying not to laugh. "Belinda," Marie said, "she threw your cake." Belinda couldn't tell who was telling the truth. She was so mad. She stumped out, but I think she believed me. Marie got me back soon after. Everyone knows how I am about my hair, especially her. You'll never see those big Michael Jackson fans on our stage blowing my hair around. I don't like my hair to blow or even to move. Right before I go on stage, I always take the comb from the hairstylist and make a few adjustments. My hair has to be 100% perfectly shaped, especially my sideburns. So one night, right before we about to walk on stage at an award show to accept an award, Marie came over to me. She took both her hands and roughed up my hair. "Bye," she said. "Have a nice show." That year, TLC was asked to shoot some scenes for House Party 3, which came out in early 1994. We played a fictional band called Sex as a Weapon, and it was so much fun. On the set, Marie went up to Chucky Booker and told him I wanted to sleep with him. She told him in front of all his friends, so they all thought I was after him. I had no idea. Marie kept asking me to do this nasty gyrating dance, go to me to do it. I didn't notice it was right in front of Chucky. "Hey, T," she said, "do that dance for me." Here I was dancing all nasty, and he thought I was doing it for him. Marie let it go on until we left for the day. She told me after he was gone, "That heifer." This went on for years. We pranked each other all the time. It kept things fun. It reminded us that we were still normal people who liked to have a good time and to laugh. We weren't exactly normal people in the eyes of the public by that point, so it was important to remind ourselves. There's this thing that happens when you start learning you're becoming famous. You see people's reactions to you when you're not on stage, and you just know. One day, before a show on the tour, we went to a mall somewhere in the Midwest. We wanted to shop, but we started getting recognized. People formed a crowd and chased us. They formed a mob. It was so scary. We started going places and people would rock the car and not let us drive away. That was when we realized we'd made it. We did a one-off tour date in Jamaica, and afterward, fans mobbed the car. We were stuck there for almost an hour, not moving. They had to get all the kids off the car so we could leave. It's really weird when you experience it for yourself. At first, you smile because you realize, oh, we're famous. Then you realize someone could get hurt. I've had fans rip strands of my hair out so they can have a piece of my infamous sideburns, and I've had my earrings snatched out of my ears. They wanted to keep something of mine, whatever it could be. One night, a fan fainted when I came on stage. It's weird to see people drop like flies when you step out in front of them. I was her favorite band member, so after the show, as she was lying on a stretcher, I went to say hello. I touched her leg and she started hyperventilating. She almost stopped breathing completely. It was insane. The paramedics had to send me away so they could work on her. I was so upset and became nearly hysterical myself because I'm just a person. To this day, it makes me uncomfortable when people cry over me, but I know, to them, I'm more than I used to be. Our most infamous fan encounter happened in April of 1993. We were booked to play a show at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Southern California. The show was supposed to take place 3 days after the verdict came in for the Rodney King federal civil rights trial. Tension in Los Angeles and around the country was high. Race was an issue, and everyone was worried about more riots. The show was us and Paperboy, and Magic Mountain couldn't handle the massive number of fans who wanted to come. The concert tickets sold out almost immediately, and the fans, many of whom were already inside the amusement park, were not happy about it. They'd come to see us, and the park wasn't letting them. So they rioted. Hundreds of people tore the park up, breaking windows and looting the shops. Then they tore up the surrounding area in Santa Clarita. A nearby Wendy's had all of its windows broken, and people smashed in the salad bar and the cash registers. There was a lot of damage, and the cops started arresting people. They had to bring out the National Guard to escort us back to the hotel. They walked alongside our van with massive rifles as the driver steered us out. Back in our hotel, which was around the corner from Magic Mountain, we didn't realize that the rioting had continued into the night and the next morning until rocks started crashing through our hotel room windows. Lisa and I woke up to glass shattering. The fans didn't know we were the ones in the hotel. They just wanted to destroy anything they could find. We had to be escorted out of the hotel. The next day, the news had a field day with the incident. We got blamed, even though it wasn't our fault that the promoter had oversold the concert. Magic Mountain spokeswoman Eileen Harrell told the Los Angeles Times that the crowd rioted because they were attracted by that type of music, calling us a rap group. TLC isn't a rap group, as anyone who's a fan of us knows. She also said, "We won't be scheduling any more groups like that in here ever." She made it a race thing, which was ignorant and unfortunate because our audience was totally mixed. We've always had fans from all races, including white, black, Hispanic, and Asian. We're universal, so it was gross the way they spun it. The writer of the Los Angeles Times news article wrote, "The two groups that performed are regarded as milder than the hardcore gangster rap groups more commonly associated with violence at concert venues." If someone wrote that about an artist now, there would be an uproar. But the flip side was, after that, we knew we were really popular. We'd become massively famous, and fans would cause a scene if they weren't allowed to see us. We didn't always know whether something should or shouldn't be happening. We just rode with it. We were always excited to be involved and to be there, whatever it was. It felt like a big party all the time, even when things got scary or fans mobbed us. We got to go to the Grammys for the first time in February of 1993, right before the tour with Bobby Brown wrapped. Ain't Too Proud to Beg was nominated for Best R&B Song. We didn't win, but it was worth it to get to be there. That was the night I met one of my favorites, Patti LaBelle. I grew up loving her because of my mom. She was at the RCA Records Grammys after party, and I was so happy. We were hopping from party to party, taking full advantage of our nomination, and I saw her from across the room. "Oh my God," I said to Patty Auld, "I love you. My mom loves you. I'm so excited to meet you." She gave me the biggest hug. The next time I saw her, she sang one of my lyrics back to me. It was everything. Patti LaBelle knew who I was, and she sang my song and sounded just like me. Even when you become famous yourself, the truth is that you could still get excited over other celebrities. Our first album felt like a giant whirlwind that lasted nearly 2 years. I remember working constantly, barely taking any time off to come home. After the Bobby Brown tour wrapped, and after we finished all the extra shows they booked for us, it was finally time to go home to Atlanta. It was time to make our second record, and now the pressure was on.
This is the end of the CD. The audiobook continues on the next CD.